I remember watching pro wrestling for the first time in 2001. I was with some friends and we were watching, I believe, Chris Jericho and The Rock teaming up against Rhino and another guy whose name escapes me during the 2001 Invasion storyline, though for me personally, I did not know what the storyline was. I just saw these two teams going at it and being hooked into wrestling ever since. And I have been watching wrestling with some hiatuses here or there for the past 23 years. And in 2022, the landscape of professional wrestling was altered, sort of, with a horrendous incident at All Out 2022, and let's just say things have not been the same since for many, and I had stopped watching wrestling like I used to religiously watch it every single week. Before that it was the pandemic, but AEW was always my niche to go to because I was fatigued with WWE. I didn't want to deal with WWE's managements and their policies and their very disturbing shaky camera effects because they think camera cuts equals masterpiece magma opus according to Kevin Dunn. Thank God he's gone. And all the dark stuff that goes on in the underbelly of wrestling. But there's always that reminder you get when you watch wrestling. In 2023, there was a match with Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. The Bruv versus the God of Pro Wrestling. And in this match, it was so phenomenal, so beautifully detailed. At first, I was worried it was just going to be stuck at Gear 1. At first, that was how it looked to me. But then, I watched the match go on into its second and third acts. And I was forever hooked by the chaos and violence and the athleticism and ability these two were bringing into the ring. I even boldly and brazenly have said that this is the current reigning match of the decade for the 2020s, which is a pretty high bar to set. As a guy who doesn't watch as much wrestling, I usually get some opinions from other people who I follow and who I talked with, like the AEW crew that I've always hung out with for some time now. Since the passing of Brody Lee, and certainly some people argued with me, agreeing that that this is the reigning match of the decade. Well, it's 2024, and now there's a contender featuring one of the same performers from that match, but with Bryan Danielson. Oh, Bryan Danielson being All Elite since 2021. He has been one of their biggest and best signings. He is really there to go out on his massive red, raging wrestling terms. And sure enough, Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson were inevitably going to collide. When Will Ospreay arrived officially in AEW was at Full Gear 2023, becoming the hot free agent onto the scene and announcing his intentions to go All Elite after a series of matches and runs he was going to do, and finishing up his contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling and doing some matches in TNA and doing some final contributions to the British pro wrestling scene, which I will be honest had suffered massive decimation from WWE's NXT UK initiative and the darkness that was Speaking Out. And I will not get into that because if I do, I will go crazy. But Will Ospreay debuted in a hellacious, awesome, phenomenal match against Konosuke Takeshita as part of the AEW roster and as part of the Don Callis family. Having already had some matches in AEW's banner with Forbidden Door against Orange Cassidy and Forbidden Door again with Omega and Chris Jericho, even getting a good match with Chris Jericho out at All In. Ospreay he was perfect for the All Elite Wrestling picture, and he was certainly going to become a future world champion there at the rate he was going, delivering some of the best matches and best content that I have seen from a performer in such a short span of time. It was truly the year of Will Ospreay between 2023 to 2024, and he's had some phenomenal matches, and he is only 30 years old. And when I realized that I'm 28, I was like, damn, I'm getting older, and damn, if I could put in the effort and energy to it, I'd probably get in wicked shape. But I am absolutely lazy. Okay, enough about bashing myself, but yeah. When Bryan Danielson arrived into AEW in 2021 with Adam Cole, baby, it was a hellacious night for All Elite Wrestling. It was the biggest, best moment to ever be witnessing live. And if you were there, you were in seeing magic, because on that night you saw the return of CM Punk. That golden era of AEW was there, and it was going to be a hell of a ride. And then 1 year later, the fun was over, because CM Punk and the Elite had their massive differences reach a boiling point, and with miscommunications and horrendous communication going on between the leaders and the roster and the management, the tension within AEW reached a fever pitch and really got out of control. But during that whole process, there were three people trying to carry as much as they could with AEW and through that time, and those three were Jon Moxley, the then retaining AEW World Champion, since he was the American ace of the company at that point. Bryan Danielson, serving as more or less the left-hand man, since Tony Schiavone was the right-hand man of Tony Khan. And there was Chris Jericho, who I will not get into this video, because oh my god, the year afterwards has been nothing but hell. But that's a completely different set of circumstances, and also because I'm pretty sure lawsuits will be enabled and once if it really gets that to a boiling point ever again. But Bryan Danielson was becoming the more active involvement in the company. He was rising in the behind the scenes thing, and he is honestly the one guy I honestly would trust with that kind of power, because he is so humble. From what I've seen from interviews and all that, he is extremely humble. He cares about this business more than any wrestler I've ever seen since. Probably since Terry Funk, which says a lot about in terms of how over and how humble this guy can get. And the fact that he continuously refuses to hold the world title, even though everybody and their grandmother want him to hold the effing title. And for God's sakes, Bryan, you would kill it on the world title scene. Come on, man, just do it. And he just doesn't want it. Like, he looks at that belt, sees its beauty, knows it looks great on him, and he's like, nah, let's give it to someone else who's more deserving. And you're just like, Bryan, can we hire you as our hand of the king? I mean, like, Tony Khan even came out and admitted that in an interview a while back, that if anything happened to him, he told his dad if anything happens to him one day, Bryan Danielson should take the reins, which says a lot. And of course, Bryan Danielson, heading into 2024, announced that this would be his last year as a full-time wrestler. And in that time, he's been going out, doing all the biggest matches, having the biggest performances, the best matches of the night in Japan, in Mexico, in AEW, doing everything he can to go out in a blaze of glory. And sure enough, we knew that eventually you had to do Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson. And when they finally encountered each other on the night after Revolution, you were all hooked. We were all hooked. To see these two go at it, to see these two finally challenge one another to determine who was the better man, to see this dream match of epic proportions. And Bryan Danielson and Will Ospreay would build to that confrontation, both having their matches, even when you know they should not be doing that, and you want them at their absolute best, but knowing they're inherently stubborn, and in for Bryan's case, inherently horny, you know that he's going to steal the show. He's going to pack in seats. He's going to tear the house down, and Ospreay's going to do just the same. And in this match, when they finally locked horns on AEW Dynasty, April 21st, my God, it was fucking beautiful. Pro wrestling can be beautiful when it's at its absolute best. I've said this also before, when WWE forces themselves to try, they can be the best in the world at what they do. And if WWE was able to do that all the time, and not do it when certain selective things happen to make it happen, there probably wouldn't be a need for AEW if WWE was not being run by a crazy psychotic old man who needs to know when to stop. And even after he left, he's still trying to do something. But enough about that. Ospreay and Danielson would have possibly the biggest match of the year. Would probably have the match that could take on Kenny Omega and Ospreay round 2 as match of the decade even. Like, if we were to have a nomination convention and we were to get all the companies together to go ahead and put their place in voting for their top 5 matches of the decade, that they would get a match once a year throughout the 10-year period between 2020 to 2029. They would get their top matches from each section and have this competition on the internet and everywhere to vote which match was the best. They would let you watch these matches, give you the choice to vote for all these matches. And honestly, throughout this current decade, it's been Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay 2, Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay 1 for New Japan, and Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson, and hell, we could go even further, Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega at AEW's event of the Arthur Ashe Stadium event. And by God, that was a great show. Too bad I couldn't go there. And then you also gotta remember, oh wait, there's also Bryan Danielson versus MJF, all these matches that helped build AEW's longevity and helped these fan bases really get more involved in this stuff and just seeing the best and the best go at it. But Ospreay and Bryan managed to make everything feel so much different in this match. To see these two just go at it, showcase their personality, showcase their athleticism, the potentially damning accusation of me saying that there's a secret surgeon putting rubber into their bones, because by God, there's no way a human being can move like this. Ray Phoenix, can you please tell me if that's the case? And you see this pool of talent in these two alone that could build an entire company for. And it's just so beautiful to just see them go at this level. And please note, like a year prior, Will Ospreay had a kidney infection before his big year happened. Remember that? We all remember that, and that was a scary time. And then he came back and stole the show again, like it was nothing. And you're just like, damn. And sure enough, Will Ospreay and Bryan had this match, and there was a moment where I wanted Bryan to win. Like, as much as I know Ospreay was gonna win this match, Bryan winning would have been just nice, because it wouldn't hurt Ospreay. He'll make it back. We could do this for all in even. But Bryan, he's just doing this blaze of glory run to end his career as a full-time wrestler. He's still gonna wrestle, but he's gonna do it part-time instead of full-time once his little girl turns 7, which means Bryan has absolutely lost his mind, and I'm pretty sure there are cases we can make that Bryan needs to probably talk to his daughter and say, hey, remember how I said that I was going to retire full time? Well, you see, I've kind of injured myself like on several different occasions, like my arm, I fractured my orbital bone, and I'm still wrestling with a fractured orbital bone. I'm getting my ass kicked every week, and I just put myself through a hardcore wrestling match the night prior to AEW Dynasty. Can we delay this by when you're 10? Yeah, would that be a good idea? Oh, God. And then you gotta wonder how Bree's handling this, because Bryan Danielson then fought Okada and broke his arm and wrestled for another 10 minutes. And then there was Bryan screaming his classic, kick his effing head in, and I was just like, oh God, Bryan, can you just... Can we like make you immortal, possibly eternally young and forever immortal, to just keep kicking heads in, kick their effing heads in, and get the crowd chanting that? It's just so fun. And then you get this out of nowhere sequence when Ospreay goes for his Oscar cutter, and Bryan knees him mid-air in the middle of it, mid-strike, and you're like, that didn't just happen, right? And Ospreay kicks the hell out of that match. He kicks out of that lock, and he is now out and down. Bryan tries to kick his head in, fails miserably, and then it comes to this moment. Ospreay gets another cut, Ospreay strike in. Bryan lands his knee again on him, Busaiku knee, and then we get the ending. The last match of that night. Will Ospreay, Bryan Danielson on opposite corners of the ring. They're getting amped up. Bryan is doing the yes chants. He's getting the crowd hyped, doing the yes, yes, yes. And Ospreay is also getting up, staring deeply into Bryan as Bryan and him lock eyes. And Ospreay starts taking off the elbow pad off his arm to get the Oz cut, just to get one last strike. One move determines it all. The one wrestling move will finish this match off, and it will determine the destiny of their careers. And by fuck, did they do it right. Ospreay lands first. Bryan misses his shot, and then Ospreay, to add insult to the injury, add injury to insult, decides to take him down again with the Tiger Driver 91. And oh man, we freaked out from that. Me and so many others freaked out from that, because the last time Ospreay did that, it was against Kenny Omega. And once again, I'm left wondering how much Kenny's doctor is trying his best not to scream at Omega, telling him he's the effing moron for doing that. And sure enough, Bryan looks like he's hurt. He's twitching. He's spazzing out. I'm freaking out. I'm worried. And Ospreay, in the heat of the moment, goes ahead and lands one last strike to the head, gets the pinfall victory, and defeats the American Dragon. Ospreay is in the heat. He is hyped. He is wondering, oh God, we just did this. We made history. But then he sees Bryan hurt. Ospreay is now conflicted about what just happened. The realization setting in that Bryan is hurt. And then he tries to tend to him, tries to be his respected competitor as Don Callis, who's been providing commentary in this match because Ospreay's association with the Don Callis family, tries to get Ospreay cheered up, trying to reassure him what happened with Bryan wasn't his fault, more or less. And Ospreay just tries to celebrate as best he can, but helps Bryan out, takes him to the back, and in the production behind the scenes footage shows Bryan not wanting to be seen in this state, but Ospreay is clearly apologetic for what happened in that at the last 30-second mark. And despite that, it got so much praise from fans. It got big reviews, broke records for review stars. Even Dave Meltzer gave it a 6.5, which makes the second biggest match by his ratings, only behind Omega and Okada at Dominion 6-9, all the way back in 2018, which is so freaking long ago, isn't it? 2018, Okada and Omega 4. My God, we'll never see a match like that ever again, probably. Maybe. I don't know. They'll probably top it. They'll find a way. But Ospreay and Bryan Danielson got their flowers in. They got their praises. They got their love. They got the adulation of AEW fans, of all the wrestling fans, all over the world to see this grand match. And my God, it was what pro wrestling can be at its very best. To see these two go out, see two greats just tear it down with the roar of the crowd. It is awesome, and pro wrestling can be beautiful when you can go all the way, and it's fucking awesome. So, stay tuned for the next set of videos I have planned. We'll see y'all again next time. This is your host, Eric Brown, of Neo Reality Entertainment, NRE the Wrestleverse, signing out.